Well, my friends, who would have thought it? 100 episodes. 100 shows where we take specific aspects of backyard gardening and break them down into hyper-focused short videos that get right to the point. No unnecessary fluff, none of those garden updates, and nothing to distract us from getting the answers that we need. Not even this little monkey here. So, without further ado, here we are at the Garden Quickie Volume 10, episodes 91 to 100. Enjoy. Hey? Yeah. The best crops to grow are the ones that are not only generously abundant, but also store for a very long time. Potatoes are definitely at the top of that list. Highly prolific, easy to grow, and certainly long-lasting. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we help you store all your harvests. And today's episode is all about setting up your freshly harvested potatoes for long-term storage. Time's short as always, so let's dig in. The first thing we need to realize is that there's two kinds of potatoes that you can harvest, no matter what variety you're growing. And only one of those kinds is suitable for long-term storage. New or baby potatoes are great and no doubt tasty. But when we're talking about long-term storage, they're not the potatoes we want. Mature or storage potatoes are the ones that are harvested as the foliage of the plant dies down at the end of its life cycle. This ensures a mature spud that's not only ready for harvest, but also for storage. Well, almost. Much like our garlic, storage potatoes, before they can be stored, must first be cured. This is done by drying out those potatoes in moderate temperatures with relatively high humidity. We do this to toughen up that skin for maximum longevity. 2 weeks is plenty, and your potatoes are finally ready to store. Now is when you want to brush off any of that loose soil that's still on the potatoes, but don't wash them. In fact, that's one of 3 things that you can't do when you're storing potatoes. 1, like we said, don't wash them. Only wash potatoes immediately prior to eating them. 2, don't store in an airtight container or bag. And 3, keep them away from the light. It's the heat and light that cause potatoes to sprout after they're cured, and we obviously don't want that. Okay, finally onto the storage. Choose a dry, cool location, above freezing, and relatively dark. Keep the potatoes single file so that they can breathe, and in those conditions, they'll keep for up to 4 months. Amazing super spuds. What could be better than potatoes from your own garden? The only thing that could come close is maybe the next episode of the Garden Quickie. There's no doubt zucchinis are one of the all-time greatest producers. In fact, sometimes they don't know when to stop. Because of this, I've been growing truckloads of zucchinis every year for the last decade. But now, with the end of summer, with the end of life for this zucchini bed, I remember the times when it wasn't so easy, when it wasn't so automatic to grow a ton of them. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome back to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we solve all your squash problems. And today's episode is all about zucchini failure. Or, more specifically, why do zucchinis fail sometimes? I got 5 reasons today, time's short as always, so let's dive in. The first reason they fail is space. Zucchinis are large plants with large leaves. They hate to compete, both with each other and with other plants. And this shows when they're planted too close together. Not to mention, those big broad leaves need excellent air circulation, or they can become susceptible to powdery mildew. The second reason for failure is pollination problems. Zucchini plants grow vigorously and flower equally so. Each plant has two types of flowers, male and female. Zucchinis are exclusively insect pollinated, and if you have malformed fruit or it falls off early, quite likely it's due to poor pollination. The next issue could be your soil. Like we said, zucchinis are large and vigorous, and this level of growth takes a lot of inputs. But it has to be balanced. Just as poor soil and lack of nutrients will affect your crop, so will an imbalance. Most notably, excess nitrogen. So, take care and keep the fertilizing balanced. One issue that new growers often see is the rotting ends of the zucchini fruit, in a condition known as blossom end rot. While this is directly related to calcium deficiency in the plants, adding more calcium to the soil often doesn't help. Because it's most likely due to our final reason for zucchini failure, and that's improper watering. Zucchini plants need a lot of water, and they need it consistently. From 2 inches and below the surface, the soil should never dry out. This plant sucks up water and transports it at an alarming rate. The first sign of low water, and these guys are going to wilt in a heartbeat. Mulch around the base, water thoroughly and often, and your zucchini plants will reward you with bucket loads of produce. Know what else is going to reward you with bucket loads of produce? Watching the next episode of the Garden Quickie. While good soil is the lifeblood of our garden, allowing us to grow the unreal bounty that we do, once the crop or season is over, it's often an afterthought. Used up and spent pots, crops, and dirt, all tossed aside to be dealt with at a later date. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we make your garden that much more efficient. And today's episode is all about spent soil and what to do with it. I got 5 things that I like to do to reuse my soil every year. Time's short as always, so let's get into it. The first and easiest thing to do with old soil, especially pots, is to simply compost it. Spent soil is a great base to start off new compost with, and it adds valuable structure and aeration for existing ones. But, as anyone knows, composts quickly fill up, so we're going to need some more strategies. And one of those strategies is to reuse them as the potting soil they once were. And we can do this in 2 ways. We can either mix it 50-50 with a premium potting mix, or we can use it as a base, filling up the pot with it 1/3 of the way. No doubt, fresh potting mix is expensive, and any way that we can extend its use is going to make our gardens that much more efficient. And speaking of efficiency, one more way to reuse old soil is to fill up new garden beds. Filling up brand new garden beds with expensive topsoil, just like with our pots, is neither economical nor recommended. Reuse some of your spent soil to create a base to build upon for a healthier, more productive soil profile overall. The fourth way that I like to reuse old soil is either as a top dressing or even a mulch. Existing soil, even if already used, is likely still high in organic matter as well as beneficial microbes and bacteria. Very good for plants, especially perennials, and it extends its use to another part of the garden. And finally, a great use for that old soil is to make the landing pads for direct seeded crops. Things like beets, lettuce, carrots, and even garlic. When structure and aeration are more important than anything, used soil is a great base to start those crops off with. Hey, know what else is a little less juicy? Hey, know what else is a great base to start your crops off with? The next episode of the Garden Quickie. In the world of gardening, planting more doesn't always give you more. And one crop where that's clearly the case is onions. Room to grow, room to thrive. It's not much to ask for. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome back to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we give you all the space you need. And today's episode is all about onion spacing, the what and the why. Time's short as always, so let's get into it. As we know, proper plant spacing is important for all plants, not just our onions. Plants grown too close together are going to compete for water, sun, nutrients, and the physical space itself. Not to mention the lack of airflow due to packed-in foliage that can increase the chances of mildew and disease. Now, plant your crops too far apart and you could be limiting your overall harvest potential. Plant them too close though, and you might not be getting any harvest at all. As we go through the recommended spacing, keep in mind that this is for bulb onions only. For green onions, I've jam-packed these guys together every year without any ill effects. Bulb onions are planted in 3 different ways: direct seeding, individual starts, or pre-bought onion sets. But no matter which method you choose, spacing is always the same. For smaller onion types, 2 inches apart center to center is the absolute minimum, with 3 inches being preferred. Medium-sized bulbs should be planted at least 3 inches apart, with 4 inches being preferred. And large varieties should be at least 4 inches apart, with 6 inches being ideal. Find out what variety you're going to work with, measure your growing area's dimensions, and then plant accordingly. Bigger the space, bigger the yields. Know what else is going to give you bigger yields? Certainly bigger than these misplanted onions? Watch in the next episode of the Garden Quickie. End of summer, and the state of this bed is not pretty. But it's shocking how productive it was and how much we were able to harvest out of it in a single season. But as you know, that level of growth and subsequent harvest doesn't come without care and attention to the soil itself, especially when you refuse to use chemical synthetics. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we keep your garden soil as healthy as it should be. And today's episode is all about no-till garden cleanup. More specifically, how and why when we're cleaning out our spent crops and beds, we protect our garden's most precious resource. Time's short as always, so let's dive in. A good backyard grower is going to cultivate a healthy soil, so it'll in turn support healthy crops. But why is protecting the soil so important? Well, no-till gardening has several advantages, including less erosion, less compaction, preservation of valuable soil microbiology, and it really helps to prevent moisture loss. All things that result in a healthier soil. But you know what else? For the residential grower, it's also faster, easier, and far more economical. Let me show you how it's done. It's super easy, and for the home grower, no special machinery or equipment is necessary. Root crops such as carrots and beets can be pulled up as they normally do. For larger plants like your peppers, tomatoes, zucchinis, brassicas, etc., simply cut the whole plant down right at the root collar. Now, the root collar is where the soil meets the stem. Let's see a few in action. The easiest way to protect your garden soil is to not damage it in the first place. And that's it. A completely painless and simple way to clear a garden bed that's not only easier, but far better for your soil too. Know what else is painless, easy, and better for your soil too? Watching the next episode of the Garden Quickie. No question, herbs are the best. I can never seem to get enough basil, and you know I love me some cilantro. But there's just something about those special herbs that keep coming back year after year. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we help you grow better for longer. And this is a good thing because today's episode is all about perennial herbs. I got 4 recommendations for you today. Time short as always, so let's get into it. I admit, gardening can be hard work if you let it be. But fresh, aromatic herbs that come back to life year after year with little effort on your part, well, that's pretty hard to beat. And one of the best at this has to be rosemary. In fact, this is one of those herbs that doesn't even need to come back to life, because as a woody perennial, it's the garden gift that gives year-round. Usually grown from cuttings, rosemary is a vigorous plant, and it's best given its own space or pot to grow in. Mulch heavily in the winter, and avoid pruning right before first frost, and you'll have more rosemary than you know what to do with. Next on our list is oregano. As a member of the mint family, this woody perennial is often associated with the Mediterranean and warm climates. In fact, even here in Canada, my oregano comes back year after year, growing bigger every time. And on top of that, because it's a mint, it's super easy to grow from cuttings for an almost endless supply. Often overlooked, and that's a big mistake. If you get a chance, give oregano a try. Our third herb on the list isn't really a perennial in the sense that it goes dormant over winter, but it does come back to life both in the spring and after heavy harvests. I'm talking about green onions and their little cousin, chives. As members of the allium family, these plants are just like their cousins garlic and bulb onions in that they're biennials, meaning they complete their entire life cycle, including flowering and going to seed, in 2 seasons. But these guys are often on an accelerated schedule, and they seem to reproduce much faster than that. Shortly after flowering, these guys are going to drop their little black seeds everywhere, coming back as self-seeded wonder plants year after year. And lastly, we have this thyme here, which is actually a cousin of oregano, also in the mint family. And just like oregano, being native to the rocky outcrops of the Mediterranean, thyme likes its temperatures hot and its soils well drained. But for as warm and tropical as thyme normally grows in, they'll handle the winters and the bone-chilling cold here like a champ. With very little care and attention, these guys will come back year after year. Not to mention, easily and readily grown from cuttings, if you like fresh herbs that require very little maintenance, then it just makes sense to grow some thyme. Just like it makes sense to watch the next episode of the Garden Quickie. There's no doubt about it, peak interest for gardening is always right before spring. Emerging from our winter slumber, sprouting earlier than we're supposed to, because all eyes are on our summer favorites. But heat, drought, pests, and the rigors of the year's longest days aren't always the easiest to deal with. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we provide you with year-round answers. And today's episode is all about fall gardening. More specifically, the advantages to growing crops in the fall, like these Brussels sprouts here. I've got 3 reasons that we need to be looking at fall planting this year. Time short as always, so let's get into it. One of the first advantages that I discovered when I started fall gardening is that it's often less work. With all of the manual weeding and mulching and maintenance that we've done for the last 6 months, most of your garden's invaders have taken the rest of the year off. Spending hours upon hours in the garden weeding and keeping the beds clear is nothing but a distant memory. And speaking of invaders, what about the insect kind? Summer is peak pest party time. No matter where you live in the world, we're all susceptible to some sort of pests. As we get into fall, our most noxious pests are pretty much done for the year. The cold night should be sending them into dormancy, if not killing them outright. No more unwanted invaders? Hey, that's my kind of gardening. And our last advantage when gardening in the fall is that some plants, like this cauliflower here, just taste better. And not just the crop varieties that need the cooler temperatures to outright survive, even our summer staples like lettuce, spinach, and cilantro. When that mercury drops and they're not battling the summer heat, they taste much sweeter and crunchier. Couple that with less chances of your flowering crops bolting on you, and fall growing is just tops in my book. Know what else is tops in my book? You guys checking out the next episode of the Garden Quickie. Nothing says summer like a boatload of peppers. So many varieties to choose from, each one tastier than the next. Lucky for us, peppers are highly prolific once they hit their stride. Sometimes though, in some seasons, this powerhouse crop hits a wall. And if your summer is finite like mine, with fall looming on the horizon, well, your harvest may be in danger of running out of time. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome back to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we help you ripen all your plants. And today's episode is all about ripening those peppers. Time short as always, quite literally this time, so let's get into it. The ripening of your peppers is going to go hand in hand with the maturation cycle of the plant itself. Truly, with pepper plants, there's nothing we can do to change the nature of this. However, we can speed up the process as well as move any possible roadblocks. Peppers, unlike tomatoes, don't ripen so well off the vine. The ethylene gas trick used to quickly ripen green tomatoes doesn't really work with peppers. So, to ripen properly, they gotta stay on the plant. It's why green peppers are always cheaper in the store than the red, yellow, or orange. With peppers only ripening on the plant, we get to our first tip in speeding up the ripening process, and that's providing the right conditions. To get the absolute fastest growth, and thus those quick harvests, peppers' needs must be met all the time, but especially at the end of the maturation cycle. Moist, but not overly wet soil that's neutral to slightly acidic in pH. As much sun as you can possibly give the plants, and a balanced nutrition from flowering onwards. All of these things can be corrected on the fly, so if you're starting to see a pepper slowdown, well, this is where I'd start. Another way to speed up ripening is to remove any of those excess flowers. Maturing fruit takes resources, and anything else on the plant sapping away those resources, well, that's a roadblock and it's going to slow it down. Flowers can do this, but so can excess foliage. So, I remove all those flowers that I know won't have the time to produce a viable fruit. As well, I trim some of that excess foliage at the bottom of the plant because that's a resource hog too. And on that same note, this gives us our final tip. Pick the fruit as it's ready. Ripe peppers left on the plant are also a drain on those same resources. The more you pick, the more you harvest, and the faster those existing ones on the plants grow. What could be better than that? Nothing, except maybe watching the next episode of the Garden Quickie. As the strawberry season winds down, even in the midst of some epic late production, our thoughts still turn to winter protection. As a temperate perennial plant, strawberries go dormant in the late fall, emerging the following spring even bigger and better than the season before. And we count on this because the bounty seems to grow each and every season, provided we winterize our strawberries correctly. As with anything we do in our gardens, however, timing is key. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we help you protect your most precious crops. And today is all about winterizing your strawberries. Or more accurately, making sure that you don't winterize them too early. Time's short as always, so let's get into it. Strawberry plants begin to show signs of shutting it down for the year by killing off all their foliage. This is a clue that the plant is done and that it's entering dormancy. Temperature and day length are the catalysts that stimulate this to happen, and it's a normal part of the strawberry life cycle. Commercial growers and keen backyard gardeners know that being unprotected over winter can wreak havoc on the mother plants. So to protect them, we cover them with a thick layer of mulch, usually clean straw. The issue is, you can't do this too early, which brings us back to that timing again. Your strawberry plants are going to need several hard frosts first before they can be properly winterized. Mulching or covering too soon can actually warm up the plants, reversing the dormancy process, causing the plants to re-sprout and start growing again. Obviously, with winter looming, that would be a disaster. So, wait until at least 3 hard frosts in the fall before covering your strawberry mother plants up for winter for the best success. Know what else will give you the best success? Watching the next episode of the Garden Quickie. Garlic is an amazing self-sufficient crop that literally grows from itself by planting the individual cloves separated out from the main bulb. Depending on your climate, there's 2 types to choose from, hardneck and softneck, with an amazing array of varieties of each. But they're all planted the same way. Make that 2 ways. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome back to another episode of the Garden Quickie. And if you can believe it, it's our 100th one. And today, it's only fitting that we're talking about garlic. More specifically, the 2 methods for getting these guys into the ground. Time short as it always is, so let's get into it. Like we said, all garlic varieties are planted virtually the same way. Depending on your climate, the cloves are planted anywhere from 1 to 3 inches below the soil. How cold and for how long your winter gets is what determines the depth. Spaced 4 to 6 inches apart, the first method to planting your garlic cloves is in pre-dug depressions or trenches. And it's super easy. Just place them pointy end up, root side down, and either backfill in with the same soil or use a potting mix to bury them to the desired depth. Mulch and water them, and your garlic is nice and snug for the winter. Now, if you happen to be growing your garlic in containers, or your soil is new and loose, you can simply push the cloves down without digging at all. Same depth, same spacing, but with 1 step instead of 2. Again, mulch and water, and your garlic planting is done. 2 ways to plant your fall garlic. Both are easy, and both will work. Either way, don't forget that the depth, spacing, and timing rules of garlic always apply. And don't forget to watch the next episode of the Garden Quickie. 100 shows. How cool is that? Thanks for watching, guys. And hey, if Garden Quickies are your thing, be sure to click on this playlist here as we explore and solve more growing issues in 2 minutes or less.